Hey everyone, this is Aaron from MTGChallengers, and today I'll be covering Temur Energy for Ixalan Standard. This is basically the best deck in competitive Standard Magic at the moment, and it really isn't hard to see why. Temur, the color alignment of blue, red, and green, has incredible versatility, and playing aggressive creatures, direct damage spells, and counter spells in the same deck is just really fun. Essentially, this is a mid-range aggro deck with a twist, that twist being something introduced in Kaladesh, energy counters. So we play a lot of cards that give us energy counters, they pull up over the course of a game, and we can tap into them as a resource for removal, combat tricks, and even mana fixing. And the important thing to note about energy counters is, like any other kind of counter, they stay with you as a player throughout the entire game until you spend them, so it's a very fun and very skill-testing deck to play. So, without further ado, let's go over each card in detail. Starting with the creatures, I have 4 Long Tusk Cub. Great 2-drop to really start getting the energy count up early in the game. A Grizzly Bear that plays into a deck's central theme is usually quite playable, and this is no exception. And it also gives you an outlet to use all that energy that you build up to push through more damage, kill a blocking creature, or survive a burn spell. Next, I have a playset of Servant of the Conduit, our mana dork for this deck. Very essential card to have, gives you 2 energy right off the bat and fixes your mana, which in a 3-color deck is much needed. It also lets you get out your bigger threats a turn earlier, which is always awesome, and it's another bear, so it can be fairly aggressive if you don't need the mana. Moving on up to our 3-drop creatures, I have Rogue Refiner as a 4-of. Pretty self-explanatory, gives you energy and draws you a card, both of which are fantastic for this deck. Beyond that, it's a 3-powered creature that can attack and block, which is just fine. The other 3-drop I have is Whirler Virtuoso, 4 of him as well. Much more of a mid-range creature than the Refiner. You definitely want to hold on to him as long as you can, get your energy count up, and be able to create a bunch of Thopters over the course of a game. It's really cool because it doesn't have to tap to activate the ability, so you can literally dump all of your energy into him at any time and get multiple creatures out of it, which can be great to do, especially against a field of attackers or in response to a removal spell. Now we move on up to the 2 big threats we have in our creature base, the first being Bristling Hydra as another playset. It's a big creature, gives you energy, and has the potential to get much bigger as the game continues. And with the Hexproof clause, it protects itself really well. And finally, the last creature in the deck, Glorybringer, an obvious 4-of. It's the only creature we have that doesn't have anything to do with energy counters. It's just here because it's an awesome card. Comes down on turn 4 a decent bit of the time with the Servant, and flies over immediately for 4 damage. And you can exert him if you need to, multiple times over the course of a game, and he's going to take out one of their guys every time. Amazing card. That rounds out the creature base. Let's take a look at what else we have. Attune with Aether is honestly one of the best cards in this deck. 1 mana, get whatever color you need, and get 2 energy right away. It's fantastic, and it's an automatic 4-of for sure. Next I have 1 Abrade in the main deck. Just nice to be able to have a bit more removal and the ability to destroy an artifact in game 1. And then I have the main removal spell for the deck, Harnessed Lightning. Insane spell, probably the 2nd best removal spell in Standard behind a Fatal Push. It's just so good. You get 3 energy, and then you just pay out of your pool that you've built up however much you need to destroy anything you need to. And if it's a 1 or 2 toughness creature, you actually profit energy counters. This card, along with Attune with Aether, are really what push this deck over the top in terms of competitiveness. A playset here, no question. I also have 2 copies of Essence Scatter in the main board. Nice little bit of counter magic to really take advantage of our access to blue. Creatures are what we end up wanting to counter most of the time in games, so that's why these made it into the main board. And the last spell in the deck might actually be my favorite one, Confiscation Coup, as a 2-of. Really cool way to use, again, all that energy you build up over a game. You just play it, get some energy, and then you can take control of one of their creatures and use it to bash in and attack your opponent. And it can also take artifacts, which is really interesting. So that's another way in game 1 that we can deal with them. And now let's take a look at the mana base. First, I have a playset of Aether Hub. Really the perfect land for this deck for obvious reasons. It comes down untapped, you get an energy counter that you can use right away, and with all the other energy this deck creates, it'll go on tapping for any color of mana for the whole game. And if you don't want to spend the energy and don't need the colored mana, it can still produce generic. Now we have some duels here. First, for the fast lands, I have 4 Botanical Sanctum and 2 Spire Bluff Canal. The bulk of the deck is green, so that's why I only have 2 of the Canal. These are great lands as well. Untapped dual lands for turns 1 through 3 are really nice for a 3-color aggressive deck. I also have 4 copies of Rootbound Crag, the final dual land in the mana base. Great to have Duels for all 3 2-color combinations in Temur, this one in particular since green and red are the deck's major colors. It's a great turn 1 play if you don't have a Tune with Aether in your hand, and it just generally works well with the fast lands, because those come down early in the game untapped, and this comes down in the mid to late game untapped. And then we have 9 basic lands, which break down into 4 forests, 3 mountains, and 2 islands. So 23 lands in total, which is exactly where we want to be. It might sound like a bit too few for a more mid-range aggressive deck, but we have mana dorks and can tutor out basics with a Tune with Aether, so mana is really never an issue for us. That wraps up the main board. Let's take a look at the sideboard. 2 Death Gorge Scavenger is great for some general graveyard hate, as well as just being able to get value off of those cards you are getting rid of. You either gain some life or have a 4-powered attacker for 3 mana. And the other creature I have in the side is a single Torrential Gear Hulk, mainly against mid-range decks to let me recur my Abrades, Harnessed Lightnings, and counterspells in the later game, and to give me a bigger body to bash in with. I also have 2 copies of Magma Spray, great to have a 1-mana burn spell if you need it against the hyper-aggressive decks like Red Deck wins to take out their early turn plays, and exiling the creature sure doesn't hurt either. I have 2 Spell Pierce against mid-range and control decks, obviously to be able to counter their non-creature spells, those generally being removal spells or counter spells. As I mentioned before, I have a Braid in the main board as a 1-of, so 3 more copies in the side can give me a playset in games 2 and 3 if I need it against any artifact-heavy decks, or just decks with a lot of creatures in general. And then I have some more counter magic in the side, a 3rd Essence Scatter, and a Negate. Really just to diversify my options in games 2 and 3, and really to let me adapt to what my opponent's deck is focused on. For some much needed enchantment removal, I have 2 Appetite for the Unnatural. It can destroy artifacts as well, but I have the Abrades for that. I would rather just have Naturalize back, but gaining a bit of life is always nice, especially against more aggressive decks. And finally, I have a 3rd Confiscation Coup, primarily against mid-range and control decks. It's good against mid-range because they're going to be running larger creatures that I can take and bash in with, and it's good against control because they are most likely using a single creature or artifact as their win condition, so I can just take control of that and it will make it very difficult for them to win. And that's it for this deck tech. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more, check out my deck tech playlist and subscribe to our Tapped Out page. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and of course, subscribe to the channel for more Magic the Gathering content.